Oh, God. Oh, my God.
Here, wait. Keep going up.
Okay. Put more rasp into it.
Okay, wait, hold on. Yeah, I guess we're just right back where we were a minute ago.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. Just, I'll
It's
tell
fine.
you I'm doing something to the knob, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I did it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I felt it
Yeah.
when you did it to the knob.
Yeah. We know from knobs.
Speaking of knobs, there's that moment in between worlds.
This is the way we introduce the
Oh,
podcast.
look at that.
Please, take it away.
Did you see that, Sean? That was a fucking segue. That's how you do a goddamn segue.
Welcome back to Cage Match, everybody. Cage Match, a roundabout way of meeting Nicolas Cage. I'm your host, Sean, with my co-host
I'm Nick.
and our producer.
Peter, hello.
And this week we have two guests. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
My name's Roxanne, and I am the wife of...
I'm going by Gary. Yeah, we're going to go by Gary on the pod. And we're here to talk Nic Cage and real hyped about it. Thanks for having us. Love listening to you guys. And it feels like a real privilege to be here.
Really excited for it. I think we
Yeah.
got something good on this one.
This is going to be great. So, Roxanne, you were saying about Nic Cage's genitals.
Yeah, way to
Well,
go, Rox.
The word knob elicited a certain memory in me from yesterday when Gary and I were watching Between Worlds for the first time, only time.
Hopefully not the last. Make it an annual tradition.
Well, there was this one scene that of all the scenes in the movie, I looked over at you and I did not know what my eyeballs were seeing. That is this part when Nic Cage's character, what's his name? Joe is having sex with Billy / his dead wife, Mary.
Spoilers.
And Billy's mom comes home. So Billy jumps up. Nic Cage gets out of bed. He has undies on, apparently, and he's wearing a t-shirt. And we think he's Donald Ducking it for a minute, and you can see something sticking out the bottom of the shirt. And I looked around and I just said, what is going on with this guy's penis?
This was the second week in a row where we thought we might have seen Nic Cage's dong for the first time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Y'all are still waiting for that moment, eh?
Yeah, fingers crossed.
How
It's
else,
coming.
how else are you going to find your penis double?
Yeah,
That's true. You gotta have your dick twin.
Dick twin, right?
Dick twin, that was it.
Penis double sounds like a stunt person.
Dick twin is like just a life-affirming moment.
Yeah.
Makes you feel right with everything.
And also probably a person's name. I bet there is a Dick twin out there selling used cars.
I went over to a friend's house once. I'd never been there before. It was in a gated community. And I had to know her dad's name to get in, which I didn't know. I texted her and she told me, just tell them that you know Rich Friend. And I was like, no, I need to know your dad's name. And that wasn't her dad's name.
Rich Friend.
Got me in.
Oh, we're in the weeds now. How do we
Yeah.
get back to Nic Cage?
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
We don't.
So,
This is the podcast.
yeah, no, this is the podcast.
So this week we are talking about Vampire's Kiss from 1988 and Between Worlds from 2018. Two movies where something supernatural might be happening.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Backtracking a little bit, this is Cage Match, where we take 64 Nicolas Cage movies and pit them up head-to-head bracket style to determine the best, cagiest movie of all time until he makes more. And we have to do extra content on Patreon.
Sign up for our Patreon.
It's the only way you find out.
Find out what.
I don't know, the truth.
Yeah.
You know, I actually wanted
What
to ask
gift
about
Peter is making.
best and cagiest. You say that like they're the same thing. Have y'all rapped about whether or not that's different? Is the cagiest film also going to be the best?
No, we have to make this distinction because in like week 2, I eliminated adaptation for Army of One.
which was the wrong decision. I'm still mad about it.
It's the best decision.
It is the most cagey film. One of the most cagey films we've watched thus far.
Yeah.
I mean, where else are you going to see Nic Cage hang gliding to Afghanistan with a katana and a boombox on a red, white, and blue hang glider?
Yeah.
It's true. I do think there's an argument to be made, though, that Between Worlds is in the running for that. And he literally breaks the fourth wall at one point in the film.
No, it's a cagey ass film. I have things to say about it. So,
All right, who wants to give the general one paragraph synopsis of this movie?
I can do you one better. I can do it in one sentence. Are you ready? A ghost is taking over Billy's body like some sort of hermit crab.
so Nicolas Cage plays
Trucker Joe.
Joe Majors.
Non-union, as far as we can tell.
And no one else you've ever heard of is in this film.
That's not true. Franca Potente is in here, and she was Run Lola Run.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're right.
Otherwise,
Right,
nobody else is in it.
Yeah.
nobody matters.
Penelope Mitchell is Billy. That's the cast.
Oh, well, you forgot about Hopper Penn, Sean Penn's kid.
That's Sean Penn's kid?
Yep.
I did not know that.
Well,
The
we
drug-
would have known that if we could have seen his wiener.
That's true. You can always tell by the balls.
The family resemblance would have been
The family
too
jewels.
much. I'd been like,
That's
oh,
why they're called the family jewels.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
I bet Hopper Penn and Dick Twin sell used cars together.
so,
Yeah.
so Joe is a truck driver. Seems to be down on his luck. Owes some money on things. Unclear.
No, he had a mortgage and he had a truck payment.
Does he still have a mortgage?
Well, I mean,
He had a mortgage.
he had a
He
mortgage.
technically still has that property.
Right.
I mean, it seems
Theoretically.
fairly abandoned. He's finds himself at a truck stop where he decides to yuck some woman's yum. She's just
That's correct.
there, fucking.
She
He's
did
kind of an
say
asshole
he
there.
wanted to. Yeah.
So the woman's getting what's her name?
Well, that's a really
Julie's
good question.
getting choked out in a bathroom stall.
Do you ask for consent before you stop a choking?
Oh, damn. That's deep.
I'm
Like,
here
those
for
are the
your
wrong
big
people.
woke
I think
questions.
if you're in public space,
Yeah.
You let
and-
it fly?
No, I think if you're in public space doing that kind of act, you're unconsensually having people witness it, so you're already kind of
They
breaking
were
that.
in a stall.
And so if you butt in, it's like, well, you started it. You butted into my shit, and now I'm butting into yours. And then if they say, yo, you're yucking my yums, see yourself out the door. But
I mean,
that's my take on it. It doesn't have to be the final word.
he doesn't really give them time to explain their behavior. He just kind of kicks that guy's ass.
Right, truly.
What if somebody busts in and it turns into like a Mexican choke off where everybody's choking everybody and like everybody's having a good time?
Yeah.
That's best case scenario.
What's your
just-
safe word, Nick?
My safe word?
Yeah.
Parallelogram.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
Peter and I, like, one weekend randomly found out we had the same safe word.
It wasn't for sexy reasons.
Don't ruin the mystery, Peter.
What was it?
Rutabaga.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Very lyrical.
So it turns out Julie can travel between worlds by drowning and or being choked in truck stop bathrooms. Peter, it looked like you were about to say something.
I was going to say, she can also get choked out in other places, Sean.
Oh,
Right, it's true.
I mean, up to this point, we only know of one place she can do this.
It's an NDE. She has to have an NDE, basically. It doesn't necessarily matter how. That's the sense I got from it.
Near-death experience
Yes.
for the lay people.
Thank you.
Us enlightened folk over here, we're in on it. All of us people who are like down with all these choking terms.
I was gonna say I don't know that sex myth.
That's a good point, though,
Stick
Rob.
with me after the pod. I'll show you.
I'm curious if you could choose your own NDE experience to have to bring back people from the dead, what would you want it to be?
Oh, damn. Drowning is really, like, in the ice water, that was a really killer one. I really enjoyed that. From an aesthetic level, looking at someone drowning under a sheet of ice was very pleasing to watch. So I really like that one on, like, a visual level. You were probably too distracted by the cringe-worthy David Lynch homage that permeated the intro and the whole film.
Same composer.
Yeah, Badalamenti, right.
So
And I just found that whole thread just really hard to watch. Cringeworthy is the word I'll use. I really enjoyed some of the stuff that David Lynch has done, and I think making an homage to Twin Peaks specifically is kind of a cool thing to do, but I just thought it didn't come off very well. The piece of like Coast Salish art that was above the fireplace, and they're in Louisiana, I was like, give me a break. You at least try.
So
Where were we? So Billy crashes, so Nic Cage chokes Julie out, and then something
With
comes
consent.
back. With consent.
Mhm.
And something comes back. And we briefly see Julie between worlds. So they take Billy back home. Joe loses his truck. Billy has been, what's the word? God, I'm having the brains again.
Hijacked. I don't know.
Hijacked. Possessed. Thank you.
Mhm.
Possessed by Joe's ex-wife. Joe has started into a sexual relationship with Billy's mom, and things get weird involving him just getting a handy J under a blanket while Billy's mom's in the kitchen.
Holding a
Odd to watch.
whole meat.
Right.
Holding a whole-
Yeah.
From his wife, but from her daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it really wrong?
I mean, he tries to explain it away when when the mom catches them going at it later.
Yeah,
He's like,
that's
"That's
fair.
my wife." It's like, "That's my daughter."
Can't they just be the same
Yeah.
thing? So there's a lot of action involving ghosts.
This is a horny ass ghost movie.
Oh, I love a good horny ghost movie though.
It's hornier than Ghost.
Hornier or less horny than Drive Angry. 2 horny ghost movies.
Oh shit, you're right. This one had more boning down, but Drive Angry had more tit.
Oh yeah, Drive Angry was a solid movie. This was a great movie too.
I loved this film.
This is a
This
fun
film was
movie.
awesome.
Yeah, I could definitely watch it right now.
You guys are wrong.
Well, it's a good thing you don't get a vote, Peter.
The only votes that ever count are mine and Sean's, but first mine.
Well, I'll join you in that. I loved it as well, but not in the way it wanted me to love it.
No,
You know,
that's fair.
I
this is
genuinely
definitely,
enjoyed
this
watching.
movie's bad, and I love that about
Yeah.
it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Twin Peaks homage, him having sex in 2 timelines and reading from his journal, like they just hit you over the head with it. Over the black nurse who like has psychic powers, like it was so in your face from front to back the whole time. They kept on it.
I do have a question about the nurse. Like, you can't tell me they wrote more and then like didn't get around to using it. She says things like, "Leave that to us." Who's us? What are you?
Right.
That's our business.
Don Cheadle can, give people glimpses.
Yeah, he's a magical black man.
Yeah.
Maybe she's a magical black woman.
There were some good jams in this film.
Yeah.
There was a couple of Black Flag songs, and that song at the end. What was that one?
Leader of the pack.
Leader of the
Yeah.
Pack, Shangri-La.
I really didn't understand that choice. I mean,
Same.
if I'm going to choose anything from the movie to not understand, I don't know why I'm saying that one, but
The wall of sound, like the Phil Spector vibe, somehow made sense to me aesthetically with a house burning down. I don't know if it's because of what we know about Phil Spector or I don't know. It just, for me, it made some sort of harmony together. But you're right. I can't quite decode exactly why that song.
Phil Spector, ghost name, ghost movie, in all tracks.
There are levels to this movie I didn't even realize were there.
I know.
All right.
that
We're going to
last-
call it now. This movie wins. We're done with that.
For
Steal
shame.
the envelope.
So let's discuss the sex in 2 timelines because it's been brought up a few times and there's no description for people who.
In that situation, Nicolas Cage is having sex with the daughter of the chick that he's been hooking up with who sees dead people. Billy Mary. We'll call her Billy Mary because it's Mary, his wife's name, and
Yeah.
Billy, the daughter's name.
BM for
Woo!
short.
Yeah.
He's having sex with
All
the
right.
BM. Uh-huh.
You get it.
Nick's just pounding away on a BM. This is terrible.
This is our content.
So he's pounding away on a BM, and he's having flashbacks to banging away on his wife in the before times.
It was in his truck cab.
I mean, I don't really know what happens in these movies ever.
Or in truck cabs.
Oh, I know what happens in truck cabs.
We've seen 2 movies now where we see things happen in truck cabs.
Mm.
So he's banging away on her and, having visions of it being his wife.
What's creepy is then he pulls out his own journal and starts reading from it.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, okay,
that-
yeah,
that
sorry.
gobsmacked me. Like, what in the world is going on
Yeah,
in
she's
that
read,
moment?
no.
read from memories.
Yeah, Mary's like, just read,
That's right, it's her
read to me
request.
from memories. And he
Mhm.
does.
Memories by Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. Which, if you'd like to know my favorite quote, it is just Mary says, "Read to me from memories, Joe." And Joe just says, "Again?" While sexing. And this is everything that he reads. And this is like a memoir or some kind of story written by Nicolas Cage that for some reason he just has a manuscript of. And it goes a little like, "I enjoyed the Arc de Triomphe. You rode your penis and she straddled my mouth. Your tongues mingled above me. Your peach juice cascaded over and upon my golden cock. And I knew then that we were a family, a tribe. Our heat melting the snow beneath us on top of the mountain as the Inuit applauded.
Just brutal. Just totally brutal.
And I could give or take most of that until he got down to, and the Inuit applauded.
How could you
And
take most of that?
I was like, yeah.
What has happened to you in your life that you can handle
I'm
that?
pretty callous. I don't know, but having Nicolas Cage describe a three-way, fair, that's fine. But now you've got Eskimos watching in the background, just golf clapping, and it's like, this is good. This is exactly what I want Nicolas Cage to write in his memoir.
Oh, God. Okay.
Very cagey. Again.
He truly did write that also. I read that. He wrote that poem specifically for this movie.
That's
that was
amazing.
I don't remember. I was doing some research
It'd be weird
about
if he
this.
wrote it for anything else, though.
That's a good point.
All right. I found the through line of these two films. Weird shit Nic Cage is into. Because I have something for that for Vampire's Kiss. This movie is kind of all over the place. I don't really know how to explain it. I genuinely enjoyed Nic Cage's performance for the most part. It's weird that we're halfway through this now. We've seen 38 Nic Cage films.
32.
32 Nic Cage films. I went to art school. I don't do math. That's why I do a Nic Cage podcast. We've seen Nic Cage in 32 roles right now. And every time we see him, for the most part, I don't see Nic Cage doing a bit. He's a good actor. I believed him as Joe.
Yeah, he played super just drunk, trashy, traumatized trucker realistically.
Yeah.
Like, it met all my expectations of drunk, trashy, traumatized truckers.
Like, we've definitely seen him act drunk poorly and be not believable.
We've seen him do it really well.
We've seen him
too.
do it really well as well.
He's very inconsistent in his drunk.
I was going to say,
Sort of.
my favorite moment of acting in this film was the first scene where he's wandering through the truck stop and looking at all the chips and soda, and he's drinking a big gulp or whatever. And I really felt like I was in that truck stop. It elicited the feeling of being in a space like that with the big, bright lights at early o'clock in the morning and hearing some lady getting choked out in the bathroom and
Classic
have
truck
to-
stop.
And you got to put your
Right?
ho-ho down.
Right, I was gonna.
Check
Yeah,
out
he
what's
turns
that
down.
noise.
He turns down the hostess,
Which I
treats
do-
at the counter, which I don't understand.
I do love...
You mean the dessert bar?
But yeah, he was good being down and out. I found it far less believable when he was frolicking in the hose.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there's a few times in this film where we see something that might be a dream sequence. Like when he gets to Julie's house the first time, she invites him in, and then it just cuts to them like rutting on the couch. Then they go inside.
Is that the word you want to use? Just
rutting?
It is a common term for getting down. Grossly.
For like deer.
I listen to a lot of Australian podcasts.
This is about a truck driver, remember?
Yeah.
You want to
Nothing he does is nice.
You gotta class it up.
He's not making love. He's rutting.
He was prone boning.
But he has a vision of fucking this woman on the couch before he
Yeah.
goes in the house, which is just sloppy edited. And I now realize, but I'm like, is he maybe psychic?
Or, he's just goal oriented.
Also, all right, you find out that the soul of your dead wife is in Billy. Play it cool, dude. Why are you just waiting for her to run down to the store real quick to have an affair? Cool it.
I don't think his ex-wife's ghost is all that good at cooling.
I mean, so they do establish that she had been at the funny farm for a while. And
I glazed over that.
yeah,
I didn't catch that.
Oh, it's mentioned a few
Oh,
times that she
yeah.
was in the nut house.
Yeah, she wasn't doing so
Yeah,
good.
she doesn't do good on her own.
I mean, crazy is sexy, so
And it turns out
this all tracks.
the way her and their daughter died was he went on a 3-day run and her cigarette lit the house on fire.
Well, no, she
Nope.
killed. Yeah, you go ahead. You say it.
Oh,
Well, that's what he believes, is what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
And then we later learn the truth.
which is that she killed her daughter
Yeah.
and herself.
In a plea for attention,
Yeah.
which is wild because I've definitely known some people who would do something like this. Like Like, not to that extreme, but like, I don't think anybody's gonna like. No, it's just like I've dated some chicks who've like done and said some shit where it's like, no, your thinking's not right there. Like, you cheated on me. It's not my fault.
Again,
but, you know, and she was just trying to be like, oh, he'll. She kept saying like, I thought you'd show up before. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
she's not good at like making a safe experiment of like killing the child though.
Yeah.
Yes, one of those safe experiments.
It's like I don't know any like good way of like he's not gonna show up if there's a stopper on the knife. Do knives have stoppers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Most of them do, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's got to be a real knife with no safety on it, and you put that in the baby, and then your husband will show up before the baby dies. It's good.
Totally.
So welcome to Cage Match.
So when they get back to their old house, which is only half burnt out, because he says like they died in a fire, but the living room wasn't wasn't burnt out. The baby's bedroom wasn't burnt out, although there was a burnt Jack in the Box in it.
Mm-hmm. If you watch the trailer, you're expecting this very jumpy horror film with burned Jack in the Boxes and like, you should see how bad I am with a knife, like comments like that. But then you watch the film and it isn't jumpy like that at all. Even when they do the dream sequences, it feels like the tone, like psychologically, doesn't really shift all that much. Yeah, is he psychic? Is this a vision? Like, it's really hard to tell what the hell the mood is in these different worlds and to patch it all together. No. I thought it was a little manic in that regard.
Written by the director also.
Yeah. And then we get to see Nic Cage in a banana hammock.
Right.
Oh, man, and it's awesome. It's just what I pictured.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of like my body with Nicolas Cage's face.
I make this happen all the time with our posters.
You make it the opposite direction where it's Nicolas Cage's body on my face.
I just want this to be shared for anyone who's not on Reddit. Peter, please describe how I was described in the last City of Angels poster.
Oh, fuck. What was the exact phrase?
The exact quote was...
We need to just give a shout out to whatever user it was.
Yeah. Hang on. Yeah,
find it. All right. Also, Nick, this is where the comments are, apparently.
Yeah, Reddit is where the comments are for us.
I was going to ask, how do fans reach out to you?
Yeah, so Reddit would be the primary way that people could interact with us, and it's just Cage Match Pod. We also do try and make our Patreon have some interesting shit on there. I try and throw little clips and goofs and previews into that, and that's patreon.com/cagematch. So on Reddit, we had posted about our previous episode, which was City of Angels against Kiss of Death. So I ended up doing a Photoshop job of City of Angels, which is like a really hokey.
Oh, it's Nic so Cage good! It's like holding and kissing and stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very sweet and precious.
Mm-hmm. One of my ex-wife's favorite films.
Oh, interesting.
Mind you.
Yeah.
Is this why you're not married anymore? Because this was her favorite film.
So in this particular Photoshop job, Nick ended up as Nic Cage and Sean ended up as Meg Ryan. And Reddit user HeartsPlayer721 commented, "Makes Meg Ryan look like a blonde Robert Downey Jr."
I'll take it. That is going on my dating profile.
You look charming in this picture.
I look charming everywhere, motherfucker. It's only when I open my mouth that things kind of get sketchy.
We now know that you look good with tits and blonde hair, though.
All right. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, this movie. It ends weird. Nic Cage loses his shit. Julie shows up with Billy's boyfriend. Julie gets shot. Has a tussle with Mary's spirit. Billy comes back. They leave. Everyone else dies.
Yep. They're just desperate to do a David Lynch homage at the end with wall of sound and tragedy, and it's just clunky as hell.
But like his death, can we just talk about that a little bit? Like, what the fuck?
Oh, that's right. He lights himself on fire
and smokes a cigarette.
But doesn't cry out ever. Like, I'm pretty sure if I lit myself on fire, even if I was really like resolved to do that, I am almost positive that the second I was on fire, I would be screaming my fucking ass off.
Yeah, he might have been suffering from some real like disassociative stuff at that point because he was pretty fucking ganked out.
Yeah, he was pretty weird in that scene.
I liked
he was he was between worlds himself.
I do like oh, that's when you should have cracked your sparkle butter.
Yeah.
I do like
crack everything.
I do like the whole sequence of picks up gas can, pours it on self, lights cigarette, is on fire, takes one drag, then puts a cigarette out on himself.
Mhm.
As if he just needs to hurt that little bit
Right.
more.
And you could see the flame. You could see the
Yeah.
cigarette going. It wasn't. It wasn't in any way overshadowed by the giant flames engulfing his body from the gasoline. You could see the little cigarette burn going into his heart.
It
So-
was a
and then-
new, unique flame.
Mhm.
And then there is this second ending
That's right.
where
Who saw that coming?
where a young Joe takes a shotgun while his dad is yelling at his mom and points the gun at his dad, and his dad's like, finally standing up for yourself, and then credits.
Yeah, it seems weird to add that at the very end. It's
Yeah.
like,
Does
okay,
it though? It
movie's
seems
over.
perfect. It's exactly right for this
Yeah,
show.
it made no sense. It didn't fit at all. It's perfect for this movie.
Yeah.
For this one, there were no fun facts I could find by a light Google, but I did find the most amazing user reviews, and I want to read just a couple to you. One of those rare Nicolas Cage movies when he comes to play, but makes watching him feel like work.
Mm.
If you saw Mandy and wished more Nicolas Cage movies were dark, weird, and personal, watch Between Worlds and be careful what you wish for. Cage makes 4 of these a year, and usually 2 of them are good, so Between Worlds isn't one of the good ones. So my quote is when he first meets Julie, and she asks if he has a family, and he pulls out a picture of his wife and daughter, and he goes, "Wife and daughter, you like? Whoops, they're dead."
You know, I don't have a quote. I just have the image of Joe getting sprayed by a garden hose while he's doing the Captain Morgan leg step in the air. So profound.
Yeah. All over a motorcycle, like washing a motorcycle. Like everybody has to be on top of it to do it.
I just want to shout out that I think a lot of the sex scenes were really inspired by Showgirls. The way that Billy is throwing herself around on Nic Cage's lap feels very reminiscent of the pool sex scene in Showgirls.
Mm.
Kyle MacLachlan.
You know, and that might be a subtle David Lynch homage. because
That's true.
Lynch is
Kyle
obsessed
MacLachlan
with him.
connection. Yeah.
I'm wondering if Nic Cage has like a contract bump, like a significant contract bump for sex scenes where he's fully disrobed. Because in his more recent movies that we've seen him have sex scenes in now, there's always, and I'm really just referring to Drive Angry in this, there's clothing. Like he had the banana hammock on, or in Drive Angry, he still had pants on. I don't think he's willing to take his pants off and do the old bump and grind
No,
without it.
I don't think he's willing to take his pants off in general.
I mean, he took his pants off for this, and we saw the banana hammock.
And City of Angels.
No, again, stunt dick.
Stunt butt, too.
I did
A
that
butt
butt
and a dick
anywhere.
are different.
A butt and a dick are different. I understand that.
Wait, what? How?
A butt is not a dick twin.
Yeah.
All right, I do have a quote for this.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah. So at one point, Julie comes in and is like, "So, do you want a beer?" And his response was, "Does the Tin Man have a sheet metal cock?"
Boom.
That's right. I forgot about that one.
Classic.
Gary.
Earlier, you talked about the whole film being manic
Mhm.
and disjointed, and
Yeah. Also, shout out mental illness. You know what
Shout
I
out
mean?
mental
Big
illness,
up
that's
if
right.
you got mental health problems. Bring it.
That's the other connection of these two films.
Yeah, just find yourself a lady who talks to ghosts.
yeah, you get to have interdimensional sex.
Mm-hmm.
But I think both of these films, at first, I had no idea why these two films were put together in this.
Random chance.
Okay, well, let's pretend you made an intentional
Yeah.
choice.
We will
And-
pretend that we did.
Because I do feel that both films have this in common. And maybe as a complete Nicolas Cage amateur, maybe this is a broader theme here. But the movies as a whole, both of them, I think, really embodied this thing about Nicolas Cage of there being this question of, is he doing something that's just trash? Or is he creating something that's really interesting, meaningful, interesting art? And you know, his acting style is pretty wild, out there, manic, disjointed, however you want to call it. Both of these films are that as well. I think the difference is that Between Worlds doesn't do it very successfully, I would argue, and I think Vampire's Kiss nails it. I think
Absolutely.
that the way that Vampire's Kiss is fucking crazy is really genius.
Well, this was something I actually wanted to talk about this week and start doing is Where do we put this on the bad actor, bad movie, good actor, good movie spectrum for Nic Cage? Is this good acting in a bad movie? Is it bad acting in a bad movie? Where would you put this? You've seen the Venn diagram of this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was all right in this up until the end. I wouldn't say his performance was bad. He put the work in.
I wouldn't say it's like a top 50% for him. I think he's had.
Of course not.
I disliked the story so much, the film from like a director and writing standpoint so much that I would say it's great acting on his part because he actually made it a little bit watchable for me, honestly. Because I just thought the whole thing was horrendous. And aesthetically speaking, what you were saying, Roxanne, I think the 30 years that separate these films from 88 to 2018, the just the general aesthetic of the two was so stark. I think all the warmth and the color, the texture, watching vampires kiss to me visually is so interesting. And this was grotesque. I just loved the aesthetic of Vampire's Kiss so much more.
I was trying to do a lot of the watching for these around a trip to Las Vegas. And so some of it happened to be just like I was watching movies on airplanes.
Oh, that's perfect for this
and
film.
I had watched Between Worlds beforehand, and I was like, oh, okay, I shouldn't watch Between Worlds again on the flight.
You should not watch that movie in a public place.
Because I know there's going to be a lot of boobs and stuff like that, and I don't want to have to like
Actually,
answer to somebody.
surprisingly few boobs. They're usually covered.
There's
up.
a lot of side boob.
Yeah.
There's very little nipple.
Wait,
But there's a lot of boob.
I think that's breaking the
true.
fifth wall because then you're watching that scene where they're doing the unconsensual kinky sex act on a plane, unconsensually showing that act to your seatmates. That's gangster.
Which is double negative, so totally consensual.
Yep.
I grew up in San Francisco. That's how this works, yes.
Well, I ended up watching Vampire's Kiss, and then the flight attendant showed up as soon as the first top came off. So I had that experience. And I'm like trying to cover my laptop. Like I'm embarrassed for myself.
Did
now.
you really
It's
put
like,
your hands in front of it?
Yes.
Oh,
I was
that's
just like,
perfect.
don't look at it. Don't look at my shame. And I closed it, but the volume like switched from my headphones to the computer.
made it
then, and
worse.
it's just like,
You know the only thing that would make that
I just
story
want
better?
a sparkling water, please.
The only thing that would make that story better, flight attendant walked up behind you, was Hayden, and just stood there for a while.
No, that would have been fine. I would have turned the volume up then. I did get a guy, as soon as I shut it and she left, the guy across the aisle from me was like, hey man, I really like that you're watching that movie. That's one of my favorite movies.
Was it Nicolas Cage?
No, it's he's a guy from Portland. Shout out to guy from Portland who works for Seattle Lighting.
Did you tell him about our podcast?
I did. He's gonna check it out.
Nice.
So if you listen,
Thanks, buddy.
cool.
Vampire's Kiss.
Nailed it.
That's your best one to date.
I always stick the landing. All right, so this is why you guys wanted to be on this podcast. So why don't you sell us Vampire's Kiss real quick? What's this film about?
What isn't this film about, really?
I agree. It's mythic in proportion. So, okay, we talked about a second ending for Between Worlds. I thought the second ending of this film was also extremely meaningful and poignant.
Straight to the ending. Whoa.
And
This is what I like.
Well, it's the beginning. The beginning and the ending, they form a circle because we're talking about vampires and eternity. It's all there. It's really beautiful. I thought this film was really powerful. Really stoked to be talking about it. Yeah, I think it's about New York City. I think it's about U.S. America. I think it's about capitalism. It's about race. It's about so many different things. I think that the monster motif is so it's such a powerful container, and you can put so much into it. I think that's why we're just gonna see for as long as we live monster movies. You're gonna see the zombies and the ghosts and the vampires. They're never going away because they point in almost any direction you want them to go. And I thought this film in particular, they used the vampire just exquisitely, like really, really well done.
Yeah, I agree. Just so for context,
Gary.
when I came to this film in the month of October when the Criterion Channel was running a series of vampire movies. And so we watched a bunch of vampire films all in a row. I'm sure maybe some of the people listening to this are much better acquainted with vampire stuff than me.
Mm-hmm. And me too. I was not meaning you.
We're vampire noobs.
Yeah.
Haven't seen Twilight,
But we
admit it.
geeked out. We watched a bunch
We
of
went
them.
hard on vampires for a minute. So if somebody wants to make a sex joke there, feel free.
And something I learned as we did this was that there's roughly 2 categories of vampire films. There's vampires who are out to feed, or vampires who are ready to lay down their eternal burden and die.
And this movie is kind of neither, which really makes it stand out in the vampire canon. And I think, says some really interesting things. Basically, Nic Cage's character in this film starts out as a normal human who is kind of hoity-toity. He works at a... What are you laughing at?
Well, normal if you call a sadistic capitalist normal, yes.
Well, which it is. And
Just, if I can interject real quick, Nicolas Cage plays Peter Lowe. Maria Conchita Alonso plays Alva. Jennifer Beals is Rachel. Elizabeth Ashley is Dr. Glazer.
So Nicolas Cage's character works at a fancy literary, like a publishing agency in New York City. He's desperately, it seems, searching for love, connection, sex, something. We don't really exactly know, but he's after women in bars and looking to fill something in his life.
Mm-hmm.
That,
and meaning. He's in
That's
Jungian
right.
analysis.
Yeah, he has a therapist and...
An analyst.
That's correct. An analyst. Up in a high tower in Manhattan. So he's not in a happy place. And one of the women that he takes home turns out to be a vampire who bites him and continues to feed on him.
Mm-hmm. With the lamest pickup line of all time. He leans over his shoulder and says, "I like your earrings."
It always works.
Yeah, juxtaposed against his pickup line later in the movie, he just gives her that solid look.
Takes a chomp.
Let's talk about those teeth later.
More physical jokes for all the people out there on our audio podcast.
Yeah, that's Nick's new thing.
Yeah, really big on this.
It's very avant-garde, Nick. I love it. I think Nic Cage would be proud, actually.
I just discovered visual comedy recently, and I'm trying to share it with people. I think it's going to be a big craze.
So, Rachel, the vampire who he meets and bites him, does she?
Oh.
I mean, this is really what this movie comes down to me. Does he think he's becoming a vampire? Or is this just a guy in the city who becomes the raving lunatic on the corner?
Oh, you know, if she doesn't bite him and he actually is just becoming more and more himself as the picture of like an unhinged white male American hero capitalist publishing Wall Street guy. I mean, that's even more terrifying than a vampire,
I
actually.
mean, that's what this movie's about, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Like,
That's right.
after his first night with Rachel, he goes to shave and he's like humming to himself in the morning and he cuts himself shaving. That's when we first see the Band-Aid. After she'd bitten him, and then he goes into his bedroom with the coffee and he hands it to her and he just starts shaking.
Right, because there's nobody there.
That's a brilliant insight, because they break one of the rules of vampire films if he is a vampire, which is that she keeps feeding on him after he thinks he's a vampire, which that's a no-go. Vampires don't feed on each other.
There's all sorts of levels for how to turn somebody. Usually, in my experience, there's an exchange where it would be like the vampire feeds, drains, and then replenishes with their own tainted blood, which we never see. So, like, a lot of times, like the familiar or whatever, the thrall of the vampire would be used just for feeding, and then they would get like, they wouldn't be drained and then replenished, but they would get like a taste of it, and that's how like Renfield and whatnot would have his powers. It's a boon given through the blood, usually to turn somebody, in my experience of vampirism.
Turning people.
Yeah.
Peter,
When I
have
turn
you ever
people
seen
on,
Nick in Daylight?
Not once.
Interesting.
I do always wait for you to invite me into the house too.
Fuck, he does!
Yeah.
Shit!
It's not the locked door at all.
What I'm thinking about right now is like, I feel like I invited myself onto this podcast to sound smart. Now I feel very dumb because I feel like I missed the whole point. But also that's wonderful because, you know, it's right there in the title, Vampire's Kiss. Like maybe he doesn't get bitten. He
Okay.
gets just the kiss, and everything is just in his mind.
Let's break these scenes. Let's break these scenes
It
down.
certainly tracks when he runs into her later too.
Yeah, no, let's break this down because so he meets Rachel at a bar, takes her home. She
Also, hang on, I gotta talk.
Bites
Did you notice that it was David Hyde Pierce at the bar?
Yes.
I
Josie
missed
called that out right away.
Yeah.
She was like,
Yeah, David
So
Hyde
funny,
Pierce
David Hyde
and
Pierce.
Ben Stiller's sister are having a chat at the bar before he goes and hits on.
Oh, that's
I did not catch Ben Stiller's sister, but I didn't dig into the credits on that one. I wouldn't have recognized her.
So the movie starts with him in therapy talking about how he brought this woman home. He was like really into her, but immediately was just the next day was like, get out. Meets Rachel. They go home. She gets the chomping. But then like the very next scene is him giving her coffee in the morning, but she's not there. And that's when he starts to get a little weird. And then she starts appearing in his office, like in his bedroom, when he's supposed to go meet the woman he's dating at the beginning of the film, but he doesn't leave his apartment because Rachel doesn't want him to. We keep seeing Rachel over and over again, and she has the fangs. And then at the end of the film,
She's got the good thing.
and at the end of the film, when he's after he's done a bitey murder, he sees Rachel again, and she's mocking him because they're nothing alike. And his imaginary vampire girlfriend has an imaginary boyfriend, and then he goes and confronts her on the dance floor. Also, shout out, all good vampire movies have industrial
That's right.
industrial dance clubs.
Yeah.
Goes and grabs her on the dance floor, and he's like, "Remember me?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, you're Rob Lowe." No, not Rob Lowe.
Peter Lowe.
Peter Lowe. It's like, "Oh, you're Peter, right? Yeah, we met." And he's like, "You breaking up with me?" And like, she has no idea who he is. Like, this has all been like an affectation of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I grew up in San Francisco. There are weird people in San Francisco, and you always wonder how someone gets to like screaming on a street corner. And this whole second half of this movie for me was just, that's where that guy started. The first act of this film, I'm like, this needs to stop. I did not enjoy it. And as soon as that idea clicked for me, I'm like, oh, this is heart-wrenching. This is amazing.
Yeah, truly.
And I think something that's important too is the way that it shows not only how the guy ends up like that on the street corner, but it connects that lunatic on the street corner to the guy in the office who's harassing his workers,
Yeah.
Right.
who's tormenting his secretary, Alva.
His most vampiric act in the whole film is what he does with Alva. I mean, when he hangs up the phone with the guy who's like, "Oh, it's totally chill. Don't worry about it. I don't even need that. It's a memento."
Yeah.
That's what Alva's looking for, is a meaningless memento. And then she's desperate to be relieved of this responsibility, and he goes berserk on her. It was so brutal.
I loved the dynamic of Peter as a boss, in quotes, in this situation. To me, he comes across as such a low-level executive in this movie. I think the stress leads him to over-project a lot and kind of make these power plays in like a mental capacity against his secretary, because she's the only one that he really has any control or any power over.
Well,
That's like the limit of his control. Even when he's talking to the other executives after he confronts Alva in the restroom.
yeah, when he chases her in the bathroom.
Yeah.
To that point, one of the things I read about this film is the affectation of his voice, that very, I think,
Mid-Atlantic.
you two.
Yeah, you could
Faux
also,
British. I read that he was sort of modeling himself after his father and the styling of Americans who want to sound fancier than they are.
Okay, yeah. Like
Donald
the,
Trump.
right, and run for president
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
That is called the transatlantic
uh,
accent. It came about in the
Oh.
late 1800s,
Oh.
1900s, and it was a way of people in the East Coast specifically kind of affecting a semi-British, semi-American, completely its own thing.
yeah, the whole
We're back to being a history podcast.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
the whole
And dialect podcast.
the whole affectation is that of Peter's. It's not Nicolas Cage's performance. The character of Peter wants people to think he's a bit of an aristocrat and smarter than he actually is.
Absolutely.
So he
yeah.
puts on that performance, and it goes in and out.
Yeah, his accent's so inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that works well in
Totally. It furthers the point that he's a phony. I mean,
Yeah.
to the point you were making, Nick, about his power over Alva, it almost makes a fool of him. Like, oh, look who he has power over.
Yeah.
In this society, someone who has very, very little power.
And one dress.
Mm-hmm.
one tablecloth.
Yeah, and she lives with her mother and her brother, and they live in the
New
birds.
Jersey or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Also,
right,
just
and
the
that's his
worst
kingdom.
family. My boss chased me into the bathroom the other day. I think my boss is gonna like hurt me or rape me, and everyone's just like, get to fucking work.
Well, you gotta work. That's the capitalism side of it all.
Which is,
Totally.
again, going back to your whole thing about this being like the true vampire.
Yeah, I think
Also,
so.
That's exactly what he says, what Joe says. Trucker Joe, you gotta work.
It all comes together.
Truly, I thought the opening scene was really.
We're now a Bootstraps podcast, everybody. Grab them. Let's go.
But I really liked the opening scene. The first visual that you get is of a long canyon of New York City streets, and all of the brake lights are on, and all of the lights are red, and so you're seeing like the red arterial veins of the city, and they've got the blood in them. I thought that was really deft, and comparing that to the like heavy-handedness of Between Worlds, it's like they just show it to you for a second, and then they're like into the story, and there was so much of that. Like, yeah, even just missing that point that he never really does get bit. Like, there's just so much to sort through in this film.
Because I think we only see his neck one time as bitten, and that's when he imagines Rachel is going to bite him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he takes it out for Rachel to bite him again.
One point, I thought the bandage changed sides.
Well, there's a lot of mirror stuff.
There's a lot of mirror
so-
stuff. He starts and to the mirror stuff, he starts not being able to see his own reflection, though we can. And that's
Right.
an issue.
Where am I? Where am I?
You're in the bathroom. I'm trying to take a dump. This movie, at the hour mark, gets to be one of his best movies ever.
The movie's good from the opening shot. What Gary's talking about with those establishing shots in the beginning, I loved the score of this movie. The
Yeah.
score of this was so well done.
Truly.
But then when you add that to these opening shots, like it's all like dawn or dusk. There's a tension built into the way it's shot that I think really carries into the movie, and it adds a lot of uneasiness. I mean, certainly on a subsequent watching, you can like look out for all these little things. But
my initial journey through this film was, there is not a through line here until there is, and it's a hard shift.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so good.
When was that moment for you?
It's at the very specific line. Tell him I'm in a meeting. Well, what if I'm in a meeting? No, it's when Alva finally finds the contract. She comes into his office and he loses it.
Mhm.
Like, Rachel's sucking on his neck and he opens the door and she's like, I found it. He's like, it's too late, Alva. But no, it's not too late. Too late. Too late, too late. And he starts chasing her down the stairs through the building, like in the sub-basement.
It is such a good American Psycho chase.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Which-
there's a lot of parallels to be drawn from that.
But he chases her down in the basement. She has a gun. It's got blanks in it that she got from her brother. And he's confronting her there. And at this point, he's just like, he's convinced he's a vampire. He can't see his reflection anymore. And he's telling her to shoot him. And she keeps shooting at the floor because she can't shoot him. It's like, no, shoot me, shoot me. And he like attacks her and
There's a sexual assault.
I mean, the ultimate vampiric act.
and then but
They
like
writ it large because
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
it's just alluded to. The sucking on the neck is alluding to rape.
But-
It's alluding to sexual
yeah.
assault. And Peter Lowe does it
Yeah.
all to your point. And
And
it's
then
like he's a vampire as just a regular ass dude.
so like, but like, that's when the whole plot with him losing his mind and the whole him just being a dick to Alva, all things like kind of coalesce and goes directly into him running down the street going, I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! And that's when the movie clicked for me because I'm like, I grew up in a big city. Like, I've definitely seen someone running down the street screaming something that insane.
Took you that long
Right.
to get into that?
The men-
It did!
I mean, that's okay. I mean,
As I'm just watching the first hour of this film, like, what is this movie trying to be? And it
Mhm.
wasn't until then that I realized, oh, this is a dissection of how capitalism, the big city, and just all that weighing pressure leads to a mental breakdown. He wants to be seen as this big executive. He has a shitty apartment.
that was one thing I noticed about everything he presents himself as. And then, like, from the very beginning, you see how terrible his apartment is. Like,
Yeah.
he's got a really small, really narrow kitchen with gross ass stove, roaches.
Speaking of the kitchen, when he comes out of it with the coffee, he hums a Stravinsky tune, correct, Roxanne? And isn't that when Nic Cage cost the film like $10,000?
Correct. Yeah, they
Oh my God, I did not
ran
read
out
that.
of money by the end of the film.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, okay, let's talk about some PETA stuff now then, right?
Oh yeah, he got in trouble for the.
That's
for the-
right.
let's talk. Oh, so he ate a bug. He ate a roach.
Water bug,
Water bug.
technically, but yes,
Uh,
he ate two
he ate-
actually.
Oh, that takes some of the panache out of it because a cockroach would be way grosser
no,
than a
no,
water bug.
bugs are bigger.
But the cockroach has the meaty insides. Water bugs, they're spongy.
They're just made of water.
I've eaten both.
So-
Trust me.
Either way, this was
Water bugs if you're watching your calories.
Exactly.
Eat that.
the caloric density.
Yeah.
This wasn't in the script. He thought this would be a good thing because it harkened back to Dracula, and he's like, "Oh, this is what someone would do." So it was his idea. He immediately regretted it. And what I read is they took 3 takes to get it done. And he said everything inside of him was telling him not to do it as he was doing it.
You could tell like in his face when he's chewing it because they give you such a direct shot. It's like he's counting dollar bills as he like chews. It's like, oh, okay, they're gonna pay $7, $8, $10 million. It's like,
There's no way he made $10 million for this.
no, but in his own head, he probably could have hoped for that.
That said, from what I read, it seemed like he really, really wanted this part and really, really loved this part and really, really loves this part.
Oh,
He said as recently as a few years ago that this was his favorite movie
Yeah,
he ever made.
2018. He said this was his favorite performance.
While he
favorite
was
movie.
shooting while Between Worlds was out.
Yeah.
He was
This was like a
Digging this
GQ
one up.
interview. When he smashes up his apartment, that was all done in one shot because it was all like real furniture. It wasn't none of it was stage furniture.
Yeah,
so they
there's
just
a
set
lot
up
of
2
glass
cameras
and
and
stuff.
let him go to town.
I always get excited at a good smash
Yes,
scene
looked like a good
because
time.
it's like,
Smashing
God,
it.
I want to do that someday. I want to just like be able to go into a room and be like, I'm gonna destroy fucking everything, and I'm gonna destroy that in the weirdest way.
Does that not
Like-
exist? Like, what's with this escape room bullshit? I don't
Well,
need a
okay,
problem to
escape
solve.
rooms,
I want
there-
something
there-
to destroy.
There are
please.
smash rooms.
There
which
are smash
Oh,
rooms,
good.
yeah.
I'm glad this problem has been solved.
Going back to him being a non-union trucker in the first film, this was a non-union film.
Huh.
That opening scene where he's trying to hail a cab with his date. Apparently, they had to refilm that scene a lot because they were union film workers with bullhorns and like air horns, just ruining the shot.
That's really apropos too, because like it's almost the film commenting on itself. This whole piece about capitalism.
Yeah, and then being a non-union crew or production.
Totally.
That's
so
right.
they
And
could push all their workers to the brink.
And if they're going to exploit the imagery of truckers in the movie as they do, then it's the least they could do to acknowledge the fact that the whole history of union busting within the trucking industry is a really devastating one, and one that has meant that most truckers no longer are able to make a living and support a family the way they used to
Absolutely.
do.
Eat shit, Bezos.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And truck driver used to be, at least in the Northwest, one of the most prolific jobs. Like there were more truck drivers in the state of Oregon than any other job.
Now let's talk about yogurt. Fuck you, Nick. I'm great at segues.
So who else
I mean, I
is
can't
turned on
argue
by
with that.
hot yogurt on the feet?
Who amongst us isn't?
So
I like
I have it
tepid
right here.
yogurt on
So-
the feet.
According to an associate producer and casting director, Nic Cage requested hot yogurt be poured on his toes to get aroused for the sex scene with Jennifer Beals.
Was it necessary for him to be aroused?
Yes, because
Apparently.
he didn't like her.
Yeah.
Apparently, he thought she was not interesting. He hated that she was casted for the part.
Yeah, he wanted his girlfriend Patricia Arquette to be the role.
Interesting. Okay, here's just both of the women, Rachel and Jackie, the 2 chicks that he like picks up at bars, both African American.
Nick, I think that plays into the broader commentary that's happening.
I mean, yes, it could be part of a bigger theme.
It absolutely
Don't worry,
is, because
Peter, they saved him.
Alva is also a person of color, so he's expressing all of this libidinal energy, all of this like really intense
Well, all
exchange.
of his predatory nature and stuff, like even just picking up chicks. is
Except for
predatory.
the woman he kills, the woman who's painted as the sort of true victim, is a
Right.
white woman, a blonde woman.
Yeah, the prize, the
Mhm.
damsel in distress is the white woman.
Well, she's the classic, like victim.
Right, exactly. But these other women who play these more sort of complicated roles and
Mhm. They're prey. They're not victims.
Mhm.
We should feel sad for the unsuspecting victim, but like Alva is, she should quit.
Right.
Also would be remiss if we didn't just briefly point out the whole theory that Nic Cage is actually a vampire because of that photo from the 1800s.
I don't know about it.
Have you not heard this?
No. Go on.
It's the same thing with like how Keanu's like a Highlander.
Yeah, they both got serious Dorian Gray shit.
Yeah, no, there's someone found a photo in like 2011 from the 1800s that looks shockingly similar to Nicolas Cage.
Perfect.
I mean, I feel like we're all just on repeat at some point. Like, take a picture of me, put it up in the future. Like, there's gonna be another.
There's gonna be another guy that looks like it. I mean, there's more of us. Doctor Who has a whole thing about like repeating faces.
I'm just a skipping record. Like literally every 5 years, I find somebody who looks exactly like me.
I want that photo montage.
The only other fun fact I have about this film is apparently at one point Travolta and Stallone were considered for the lead roles.
Oh my
And
goodness.
Dennis Quaid was cast in it, actually.
I missed that.
Before, there was a whole drama about casting.
Right. Yeah, because
Maybe
Cage had wanted it and then backed out, and then it was Quaid, and then Cage like really wanted it back.
Wow, that's wild. That almost makes me think like all of the epic and really like artful storytelling that I'm projecting onto this film is totally accidental. Like if they were really thinking of Travolta and Stallone for this, they must not have been trying to do something very highbrow. And I'm over here like,
I think
with my pinky in the air.
I
about
think
this
Cage.
film.
No, this is 100% Cage. Like Cage brought the gravitas to this film.
For me, there was such a weird experience watching this breakdown that Peter Lowe goes through, because the second time I watched the movie, I started to feel some empathy, but it was really hard for me to get to feeling actually any sort of compassion for this person. I think the reason for that was because you're not only watching a mental breakdown, which is something that is this painful experience of suffering, and that's very worthy of compassion, but you're also watching him do it in a very particular context of corporate, patriarchal, white supremacist America, where as he is spiraling out and starting to behave more and more aggressively, violently in public, the people around him don't give a shit because his behaviors are so normalized.
Right, like the boardroom, they're
Exactly.
all just like, oh,
That scene was chilling.
She asked for a raise after
Right.
you assaulted her. Oh, what a crazy bitch!
Take it out of Attila's paycheck. Fuck you.
Well, to that point, also at the end of the film, when he's fully gone, he hallucinates being in the therapist's office, saying this whole time he's just looking for love. So the imaginary therapist sets him up with one of her patients, and they're perfect for each other.
For 10 minutes.
And then and as he's about to leave, the imaginary therapist's office is like, oh, by the way, I sexually assaulted a woman. She's like, totally fine.
Yeah, just a little in release.
And I did.
That's right. People are murdered in New York
And he's like,
every day.
He's like, but I killed her. It's like, no one's even called the police yet. What are you worried about? And just he completely just disassociates from everything he does, imagines the person who's in charge of his mental health telling him it's all fine.
Yeah, it's quite prescient of Trump in a way. This whole like,
That's right.
you just break the law in public and you brag about it, and then everyone's like, oh, no big deal. It's just a little bit of treason with the Russians.
Right.
So one thing that really stood out to me and I really appreciated from kind of a filmmaking perspective is just how much this like cribs and tributes like classic monster movies. This is one of the most like quotable and memeable Nic Cage movies of all time. Like any other like Crazy Faces, it's either from this or from Wicker Man
Or Face Off.
So much of that is sort of inspired by like old dark German style, where like everything has to be these exaggerated monster moves and claws creeping across a bed and all that kind of stuff. Bulging eyes. And
when he was at
breaking down
the club, it was just straight Nosferatu movements and like body posture. And
So I watched this great interview with Nicolas Cage talking about just this, because he grew up and loved silent films. And this was a large experiment. And it's like, how can I be a silent film monster in a modern film? Like, how can I bring that physical acting to cinema now?
When he's dragging the piece of the pallet through the street and he just screams out, "Ah!" Just at the top of his lungs.
That was my quote. No, to Peter's point, this is a very quotable movie, so why don't we just round robin this and just until we run out?
I can't say it with the right intonation, but I just love the part where he literally says boo-hoo.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous. So it's after he has assaulted Alva and then has shot himself in the head with her gun that shoots blanks, and then he just boo-hoo! Boo-hoo!
He recites the alphabet.
Oh,
And brilliant.
So there's another Nic Cage podcast with this guy who's the host named Daryl Edge, and he's actually going to be a guest on our show in July. And his intro uses the alphabet to spell out Cage Rage, which is the name of his show.
That's amazing.
Well, I'll just jump in with another one,
Right.
which is, I never misspelled anything! Not once! Not one time!
With tons of gestures too.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
his body work in this is incredible.
I like
He's petulant. He's petulant as fuck.
I was in Mortal Kombat with a fucking bat. Give me a break.
That's a good one. One that it was, I think when he was in therapy, he says, we were on the bed and suddenly this bat swoops down out of
Yeah.
nowhere. And she says, a bat? And he goes, holy shit.
That's right.
It was so good.
I can't remember where this one's from, but I just loved it. Yeah, well, fuck you too, sister.
It was also with the therapist, and he says, she's asking him about something, however, he was dealing with something in the night, and he goes, oh, yes, okay, I know. I guess I was pretty horny, pretty keyed up from being with the girl the night before. I was drunk too. That was it. I'd had a little to drink. I was a little drunk. Plus, I was horny.
Yep. And point of order,
brilliant.
she's an analyst, A of all. B of all, she's a cougar, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because she was hooking up with a
That's
hottie.
right. We
oh,
saw
yeah,
him.
that's right.
And C of all,
She was
doesn't.
also fucking thirsty as shit.
Yeah.
When he mentioned getting like turned on by the bat, he's like, let's circle back to that.
And C of all, she is not the only analyst in fact or fiction to hook up two of her clients.
Rob's alluding to the fact that we have friends who were introduced through their mutual analyst.
Oops.
That is
Wow.
problematic. Although, to be fair, she didn't. It was all in his head.
Right.
All right, I do love when he's gone full vampire and he's like running around the city asking for people to stake him, and he's like yelling he's a vampire to people going into church on Sunday morning, and you know the bells are going off and he goes, "Christ, the torches of the damned!" Wait, I got one more. Then we can do next. Is when he's like Peter alluded to earlier, he's in this perfect relationship with an imaginary woman for 10 minutes, and he gets home and it's like, it's always the same. Why'd you become a vampire? Why can't you be normal? Does this mean we can't have kids?
Okay, so my favorite quote, just a little context. Nic Cage is berating Alva for having not found this contract. He calls out to one of the other secretaries to see what Alva's up to. The secretary's like, oh, she's just getting ready to go. And he's like, oh, well, send her in. So he has her come in and he's all like, oh, blah, blah, blah. They talk for a second. It's like, oh, why do you have your coat on? And she's like, oh, I was about to leave. So Peter just says, Alva, there is no one else in this entire office that I could possibly ask to share such a horrible job. You're the lowest on the totem pole here, Alva. The lowest. Do you realize that? Every other secretary who's been here has been here longer than you, Alva. Every one. And even if there was someone here who had been here just one day longer than you, I still wouldn't ask that person to partake in such a miserable job as long as you were around. That's right, Alva. It's a horrible, horrible job. Sifting through old contract after old contract. I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it. You have to, or I'll fire you. Do you understand? Do you? Good. Then there's no problem then, is there? And it's like, I fucking love that little monologue because it's like, I've had terrible bosses. I've had terrible jobs.
Yeah.
And I've had people try to fucking strong arm me in said job with shit like that. And it's like, God. And it's just insane the way he straight up says to her face, I'm making your life miserable only because I can.
Mm-hmm. That was the hottest part of the film.
It was really good.
Those wide eyes.
So,
I don't want to throw shade at publishers because I'm sure they do something. I'm sure Peter Lowe's, the job that he has, I'm sure that person does something. So I almost feel like that role that he's playing is also vampiric. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
you publish somebody else's work, you take credit for it, you suck the lifeblood out of it. Like, what the fuck does a publisher even do? No offense, publishers.
No,
out
for
there.
real though. What's ironic though, because you read the Ringer article as well, is that one of the producers of this, because this movie was so weirdly panned, none of them could get work after it, and she ended up starting her own publishing house.
That's right. Yeah, the ex of the screenwriter.
Interesting. So this got negative feedback, huh?
Oh yeah, this was not a movie that was well received. It actually like really fucked up the director's career, the producers that were involved. The only one who kind of came away unscathed was Nic Cage because his performance was so unusual. But then it really got like a cult following, and that's when it really kind of got new life. But it didn't make any money. It didn't really impact anybody in a positive way in terms of reviews. It was sort of a dead movie.
Yeah, 88 wasn't the time for a myth like this. I feel like 88 was such a time of optimism in US America, and that level of like real like deep self-inquiry was just like taboo, you know? It was like, we are doing it. This is the shit. Like everything about this is awesome.
On the spectrum, good Cage, bad movie? Bad Cage, good movie? Good Cage, good movie?
I mean, in my opinion, good Cage, good movie.
I'm
I think
on the
this
good
turned
Cage, good
into a
movie.
good Cage,
Yeah.
good movie.
Double good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a fucking wacky performance. I mean, it's
So
absolutely
weird.
insane.
Can we
Truly.
talk for just a minute about the scene where he gets his teeth?
When you said like you had a hard time feeling bad for him, this is the scene where I really
Yes,
felt bad for him.
Yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say. This is the part where like I felt my heart open to Peter Lowe because he walks into some kind of esoteric shop and he
Your
does not.
standard corner occult store.
Right.
Yep. And he asks the shopkeeper for teeth. He sees some nice teeth that are kind of realistic, and he cannot afford them. He no longer has the cash in his wallet.
They're
They're
$20.
That's $20.
But he can afford these teeth, and so he has to buy the cheapies.
Which he keeps putting it in like in different directions because sometimes like the underbite and overbite change in every scene.
Didn't notice that part. But yeah, the poor guy sits on a park bench and rips into this package.
But then, like, my empathy disappears because he puts them in and he kind of, like, chomps real quick, and then he crawls away from the bench. I'm like, oh.
No, Peter, he's a cat. He's a sexy cat.
But with those teeth, then he does tally one kill, which I'm with you. I don't think that he becomes a vampire, but that does problematize a little bit that he's able to bite someone to death.
He doesn't with the teeth though, because you see right after he
Does
kills
he take
her.
him out?
Well, you don't
He
see him take
puts
him
the
out.
teeth
But
back
when
in
after you see him kill her, like he turns around and just pops them back in.
He does have a kill with the teeth.
The
pigeon.
pigeon.
That's
Which
right.
also, are
Right.
pigeons that easy to catch? Holy fuck.
Okay, no. Okay, there's a story behind this. The pigeon he did grab was drugged, but he wasn't told that they drugged a pigeon. They just told him to go out and catch a pigeon. But they drugged one to make it so he would catch one eventually.
So he would believe it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Y'all want to drug some pigeons? Fine.
Let's talk a little bit about how he gets himself killed.
Yes.
What did y'all make of that scene?
Well, I was excited for a good old fashioned tire ironing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Alva tells her brother what happened. So her brother breaks into Peter's home and is gonna like tire iron him to death. And Peter's there with that hunk of wood he kicked out from a pallet earlier. And as soon as like the daylight's on him, he like puts the piece of wood to his chest, and the brother's like, "All right, shove."
Yeah, well, he's been asking people to stake
him for a while. Yeah.
for like the last like one or so scenes for him. It would have been sad if they didn't. And, you know, they went right for it. The pallet wood is oriented the wrong direction to go through his ribs.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed it. I think it was the appropriate death for him.
This is going back a little bit to, I guess it relates to what some of you were talking about earlier with the opening shots of New York City skyline, and just really love the way that they use the city as a backdrop throughout the whole movie. And there's so many interesting moments, I guess, both outside on the city, in the streets, and also inside. I thought they just did a really good job of creating this environment that, like the music, it creates this feeling of dread and doom, which really counters the sense of absurdity and comedy that's also happening. And it makes it very, I think the first time I watched it, I got this feeling. I was just totally confused. What the hell is this? Second time around, though, whether or not it was intentional, I thought that it had a great effect. Mm-hmm. That juxtaposition just made me think about vampires as extensions of their environment. Like, all monsters are kind of representative of some larger background, I guess. And, like zombies sort of belong in this post-apocalyptic setting. Vampires are creatures of the night and this embodied being that represents something in the fear of shadow and of the things that are in the shadows in a society and in a culture. So things like lust and violence and all this stuff that gets to be written off when it's performed by white guys.
The original vampire story, like Dracula, is about aristocrats literally eating the poor. It was literature for a lower class to comment on and point out the problem in their society of the rich white guy literally eating them.
I think to that point about the things that live in the shadows, the fact that the subway really doesn't play a big part in this film, I think is really, like, again, a very subtle move. That you would think that if you're going to shoot a vampire movie and it's going to be set in New York City, that vampire is going to make some hay in the subway. Like, that's where you go to do your thing. You know what I mean? You're in the dark, in the shadows. You can sneak up on people. You can get away quickly. But the only time we see the subway make an appearance is when Alva gives an alms to the homeless man who's singing "Beautiful Dreamer," and so there is kind of this commentary about the goodness of the poor and the working class, who actually are forced to live in the shadows in the society. While meanwhile, I think that is actually happening while Peter Lowe is going apeshit on his apartment.
All of these levels are happening at once, which is why the film is so interesting to me. That you can read into it all these different social commentaries, cultural commentaries, and at the same time, the screenwriter who wrote this thing, he was in a terrible relationship with one of the producers, actually, who encouraged him to write the script as a way to get him out of the house, I think. But he was in a rough shape, and that's real, and no matter who you are and no matter your power and privilege in society, of course, people still feel pain and suffering. And so that's a part of it too, is this story of feeling, like you're in a shitty relationship and you're feeling isolated and you're longing for things that you don't have. And it's all happening at once. So it's a confusing mess, but it's also kind of awesome.
We'll pitch it to you guys first. Your vote actually doesn't count, but what between these two movies would you pick to continue on?
Dance Monkeys.
This is why I asked you the question earlier about best and cagiest of the same thing. I would say Between Worlds is so cagey, but The Vampire's Kiss, to me, just as a work of art, as a film, it's absolutely the best of the two.
Vampire's Kiss for the win. I think even the most absurd parts of Between Worlds can't compare to the bulging eyes and alphabet reciting antics of Nicolas Cage in this movie.
Well, that's unfortunate, since
Nick and I
obviously
discussed this
Between
earlier.
Worlds.
We specifically decided, because we know how much Peter hated it, that we were
You are a
going to
fucking
pick.
monster.
Look at that.
You are the vampire.
Yeah,
No,
there you go.
It's clearly
The vampire of my joy.
It's clearly Vampire's Kiss.
Yeah, Vampire's Kiss was incredible.
It's such a good movie. And like I said, I had a hard time getting into it, but once I realized what I was actually seeing and went back and rewatched it, completely sold. An amazing film.
I just want to take a step back here and say I cannot fucking wait for Renfield. Watching him continue this role, playing straight up fucking Dracula, is going to be incredible.
So
and
excited for it.
This movie looks so good.
So this is Cage adjacent. The sequel to Left Behind, the Antichrist, Rise of the Antichrist, is coming out, starring Kevin Sorbo. And in a recent interview, Kevin Sorbo was, I'm not going to do the quote right, so please forgive me because I didn't want Google to have me think I was Googling Kevin Sorbo Christian quotes. But he said something along the lines of, the first one came out and it did really well, but everyone was just like, why isn't Kevin Sorbo the lead in this film? Why is it Nic Cage? Everyone wanted Kevin Sorbo. Everyone wanted me to do it. So I, Kevin Sorbo, who will undoubtedly one day be found in a truck stop bathroom sucking Dean Cain's dick, allegedly, should have been in this film the whole time.
Direct quote. Yeah, I don't think there's anything missed in that.
Yeah, we're crediting that directly to Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah, that was my in this week in Cage. Yeah. Kevin Sorbo thinks he's a better actor than Nic Cage. Fuck you, Kevin Sorbo.
So thank you guys for being here. It was you elevated this podcast a little bit more than we're probably used to, and that's apappreciated.
If we can, we'll link this podcast to an online thesaurus just for our listeners.
Now
that we're an educated podcast with smart people on it.
Exactly.
I just want to give a quick shout out to the Ringer article that I got a lot of my information from. It's an article called Truly Batshit, The Secret History of Vampire's Kiss, the Craziest Nicolas Cage Movie of All Time by Zach Schoenfeld. Highly recommend it for a read. It was really well done. Really, really fascinating.
A couple shout outs. We got into the Criterion channel during the lockdown, and that's how we found Vampire's Kiss, and that's how most of the films that populate our imaginations, we find them on there. Really fantastically curated. So big ups to the people who sort and organize. The way they organize the films is just so nice. And then also wanted to shout out Bell Hooks' The Will to Change.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, both movies can be viewed at my house.
Both movies are available on Tubi if you're okay with watching commercials, or you can go to Nick's house.
I have a really sweet garage we can watch them in.
It's true.
So please rate, review, subscribe, all the regular things on all the podcast platforms.
Find us on Reddit.
It does help us out. We were the number 138 movie review podcast this week. So we're moving up.
Top 150.
If you are interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/cagematch. We're on Reddit. If you want to interact with us at all, it's Cage Match Pod. And as always, thank you to our Sparkle buddies, Josh, Sean, Josie, Rico, Matt, and Adam, and our Inner Cage member, Ira, and special thanks to our new Inner Cage member, John. So thank you guys for pitching in and making this shit happen.
Also, Nick, the comments are on Reddit, apparently.
Yeah.
So there you go.
We established that last time when I said to comment on Reddit.
I couldn't remember anything last week. I could barely speak.
Yeah, you had the brains.
I had the brains.
Oh, the brains.
Bad case of the
Peter
brains.
AI'd my entire persona into that podcast.
ChatGPT just for Sean.
I don't know why you guys don't call the premium tier Cage dancers, but
Now we're going to.
Get out of my house!
Bye.
Just in general, if you want to give a little test. Hello, how's it going, Nick?
Roxanne.
You sound just like her. It's crazy.
I know. It's fooled Gary many a time.
Oh, God.
Oh, I thought I was supposed to wait for a poignant moment, like after I say pounding on a BM.
Oh,
I thought you were cleansing the space with the crack. I thought that was the point.
no, I'm just dumb.